First Class Fatherhood. That is where Alec Lace comes in with his popular podcast.
And one of the most interesting was on a podcast.
Alec Lace interviews high-profile fathers from actors to NFL players with a vision to change the narrative of fatherhood and family life.
Joining me now, First Class Father George Monsoor. Welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
Thank you. It's kind of an honor with all the people you've had on your show.
Well, listen, this is truly an honor for me. So I'm honored to have you on the podcast. Let's start like this. How many kids do you have? How old are they?
We had 4. We had a daughter. She's 42. I have a son, James. My daughter was Sarah. James 41, and Michael would have been around. Sure how old he would have been. I have to stop keeping track. Probably about 40, and then there was my youngest son, Joseph, who's 37.
Yeah, and obviously George, we're talking about your son, American hero, Michael Monsoor. We're going to touch on him in just a minute, as well as your book. I got a copy of Defend Us in Battle right here. We're going to jump into that in just a second. But if you could, George, please just take a second to hit my listeners with a little bit about your background, if you could.
I was in the Marine Corps, went in 1968. I was in helicopters. After the service, went back to school, studied business. I started opening up business, started off with contracting business. I bought a store for my sister who was having some problems, and we ended up building 5 women's stores and started manufacturing clothes, bought a restaurant, 300-seat restaurant, and then a little property and had a couple of racehorses and made money and lost money. That's kind of what I've been doing.
Yeah, I've done the same. I didn't own any racehorses, but I grew up going to the track. So I've made money and lost a ton on them as well throughout my life. I can assure you of that.
Yeah, I won a $630,000 pick six one day, and I remember the guy goes, "Well, how do you feel?" And I says, "Well, if I win a couple more of these, I'll break even."
yeah, that's a true gambler answer right there for sure. So take me back, if you could, then, George, to the beginning of your fatherhood journey. Then, about how old were you when you first became a father, and how did that experience change your perspective on life?
We were married for about 5 years before we had any children. I really didn't want to have any children. We were doing just fine. My wife was teaching at a junior college. I had my businesses. And it was just something that really caught me off guard. And we had the first child, Sarah. I just fell in love. I couldn't have been happier. I was just thrilled having this daughter, and I could feel myself changing. I went from somebody who didn't believe in much of anything other than his businesses. And it's just like it was like I was just hit with a whole different feeling. And I remember telling my wife, maybe a family would be a good thing. And then, as you can tell by the other children, we started having, we had 3 more. Although the girl was so nice and clean and smart, the boys, not so much.
Well, you got your girl right off the bat there to start with. I have the opposite of you. I had 3 boys, and then we got our girl on the 4th try. So we finally got her at the end. But I'm right there with you with the 4 kids. Now, obviously, your son Michael, is an American hero, Medal of Honor recipient. But what was he like as a child growing up? What could you tell us about him as a kid? And when did you first become aware that he was interested in trying to become a Navy SEAL?
Michael was the most difficult. He had a lot of health problems, and even with his health problems, he was just free spirit. He had asthma so bad that we literally would take turns checking on him at night. We were so afraid of him not being able to breathe. And there were times when we would rush him to the hospital. So he was pretty frail, and he was small, and he was always trying to keep up with his family, his brother, sister, and it was just difficult for him. But he never would stop. I mean, if I remember, he wanted to swim with them, and he couldn't swim, and he literally climbed over the fence one day and got into the pool just to practice to be able to keep up with them by just holding the side of the pool. He was in there all by himself. He would do these things. Like I said, he was a free spirit, and he just always seemed to figure out a way. And I think what made him so different as he grew up, it was constant bullying in school. And it really affected him, and it made him very strong mentally. And he started resisting the bullies probably when he was 8-9 years old. He would just start fighting back, and he just grew stronger and stronger. And I wasn't sure. We never spoke of the military. It was kind of interesting. Never talked about the military yet. My other two sons joined the Marine Corps, and Michael joined the Navy, and he just never mentioned it, but he said he had been thinking about it, for years. Especially when he got into junior high, he started thinking about it, but he was afraid that he wouldn't be healthy enough. And it's something that he worked on and worked on and worked on. And when he was determined, he was going to do it.
It's incredible, George, and thank you for your service as well. But it's just from interviewing so many different Navy SEALs, the pipeline to get through that training, as we know now there's so much written about what goes on there. Just the improbability of people making it through there. The attrition rate is so tremendously high and so hard to get through. So to hear Michael with some of the struggles with asthma, going through and making it through there is unbelievable that he could pull that off. And one thing, and as just bringing it back real quick, Defend This in Battle, the new book that you have out and available about Michael's life. I didn't know, just from reading the book, I didn't know that he quit Bud's training, and that he rang the infamous bell 3 times to quit and walk away. And I can only imagine going through where he came through to get to that point, how discouraging that must have been. What was he like? What was his attitude like? What was Mike like during that period where he dropped out of the training before he got a chance to go back and obviously make it through the pipeline?
Yeah, he would come home on the weekends, and I remember he had his socks on in the kitchen, and I looked down, and the whole kitchen is covered in bloody footprints. What he had done was he didn't protect his feet with all that sand, and they had just been, it's like sandpaper, and he was just a mess, and he broke some bones in his foot. And I said, how long can you do this? And he says, I'm not going to quit. And so he kept going, but eventually he just couldn't run anymore. And when he came back to tell me, he was just brokenhearted, and it took him a while just to get it out. And then the next day he says to me, a little bit brighter, he says, by the way, I'm not going to quit this. And he immediately figured out a way to get back in and give it another try. And he worked out for it. A little wiser in the way he took care of his boots, keeping the sand out, and he got what he wanted just from determination.
A truly amazing story too, and obviously all captured in the book, Defend This in Battle. Walk me through a little bit of that for you. I mean, I can only imagine it has to be difficult to go through this, and also joyous at the same time. What were some of the difficult moments to get through, and some of the joyous ones for you to get through while writing the book and telling the story of your son, Michael?
Well, the hardest part was at the end. So we didn't dwell that much on Michael. We talked about the guys that he was with, and what they had to go through to get get out of what happened. The good parts was me thinking of him when he was a child. He was hooked on speed. Probably my fault because I had a GTO at the time, and he would love getting into that GTO and have me go through those gears. And he thought we were going 100 miles an hour, and because I would quickly when I would shift, you could feel the rush. It was going about half that speed, but he loved it, and the adrenaline and the smile. And there was a song at the time, my little GTO. He literally memorized that song and would get into the car, just a little guy smiling, holding on to the little handle over the glove box, big smile on his face. He'd always put the windows down so we could just feel the air go past us. And it just would make his day getting in something. He loved to be moving, and he loved speed. And that was just always just beautiful when you get in there with me. Also, when I saw him stand up to some bullies, he's very young, probably maybe 9 years old. And these bullies were at a park, and they were pushing all the kids around. They were probably in junior high, and they were just, there's some people, they just enjoy bullying people. People don't fight back. And anyway, they pushed Michael off the swing, and all the kids off the swing, and they just kind of took over. And I didn't quite know what was going on. I called them over. We happened to be at a racetrack because I was looking at a horse that I was going to buy, and tears running down, and he knew that it was just wrong. And I said, "Look, we're going to watch this horse race, and then we're going to go home." And the whole time, I could see his little mind working and working and working. And after the race, I said, "I'm going to talk to the trainer and just stay here." Well, we're kind of on the balcony talking, and Michael, I look over and he's down, going back to that play area. He goes over there, and the play area had, I don't know if you've ever seen them, they have these like rocket ships, and they have slides. As you climb up, you can slide down. You climb up, you can slide down. What he did was he pushed all those guys off the swings. He went in the back and pushed them off, and they chased after him. He went up into this rocket ship, and he would hold them off. When they were trying to climb up, he would be kicking sand in their face, and he got them where they were all backed up, the three guys, and they were trying to get to him, but they couldn't get through because he was stopping him going to the next level. And when he couldn't hold them off any longer, he jumps on the slide, and off he goes. Down the slide he goes. By then, I'm down on the ground, and he's just running for dear life with a huge smile on his face. And those guys are trying to catch him. They got to me, or Michael got to me, and it was just too late. And he grinned all the way home.
I love that, George. And I know just from having the opportunity to speak with some of the men that served with him, Jocko Willing, Kevin Lace, JP Donnell, these guys, he left such an impression on these guys. Obviously, they all loved him, and they all speak so highly of the man he was, as just not only just as a teammate, but as a person. And I know a lot of that comes from the way he was raised and the fact that you're a first-class father as well. And I'll tell you what, one thing that drives me nuts in this country right now, George, is that patriotism is looked so down upon by so many people in our country. And I think we need more stories like this, like Michael's, to be told, because he's the ultimate living example of that freedom is not free, and that so many people have sacrificed so much for the country and the freedoms that we do have. And so what do you hope that people will get from this book, Defend This in Battle, and who do you hope gets a chance to read it?
Well, I would like to have some younger people read it because I know you're a kid, and things don't go right for you, and you sometimes you want to give up or blame other people. And I'm hoping that they see the strength in Michael, that he had a tough time, and he was bullied in school, and but he never quit. In fact, he wrote that right over, he was in the bunk bed, and so he was on the bottom. He literally wrote that message. He woke up every morning saying, never quit. He was always determined. And for a young guy reading this, I hope he realizes you'll get older, you'll get stronger, you'll get smarter, and you can't just let people take advantage of you. And I hope also they'll realize how much Michael loved this country, and it's a great country. And it's unfortunate that people are getting the wrong messages, and hopefully they will realize, this country obviously isn't perfect, but it's the best country in this world. We have so many freedoms, and for those freedoms, there are obligations. And that's why our citizens should understand that, like you said, it's not free.
Yeah, very, very well said. And obviously, Michael laid down his life for his friends, and our Bible, the Bible tells us that there is no greater love than this. Was faith a big part of Michael's life? Was it a big part of your life in raising your kids? And what would you say were the top values you hope to instill in them?
Faith, faith wasn't big in my life until I started having kids. I started realizing these were gifts, and they were special. And I really started taking it pretty serious. In fact, I did take it serious, because you have children. It's a whole different deal. You're responsible to get them ready for life. And I felt it was important that they understand there's something bigger than all of us out there. And so Michael, he was pretty strong in his faith. And he was the kind of guy that was pretty laid back about a lot of things, but he was always willing to make the argument that there was a God, and there were just things in this world that we should stand up for. And he just was one of those guys that's quiet most of the time, but if somebody wanted to challenge him to certain things that he believed in, he definitely would meet the challenge. He is, I don't know, just kind of this quiet guy, unless he had to speak up. I tried to teach my kids critical thought, so they would understand and not be fools for the rest of their lives. They had to understand when people make comments, when people say things, you have to actually, if it's important to you, take the time to understand it and be critical about what you do. Because by the time you're in your 20s, you should have a pretty good idea of the man or the woman you want to be. And without critical thought, you'll just be everyone's fool. And that's kind of what I was trying to teach them. And they did pretty good at it. My kids, and especially Michael, they figured out who they wanted to be, and they would take on any arguments once they formed the way they wanted to live their life. And I'm proud of all of them, because they just really take the time to think. And a lot of people don't think, they just go along. And I didn't want my children to just go along because somebody said something. And the other thing, I remember my daughter says, why can't we just be happy all the time? All my friends' parents want their kids to be happy all the time. And I said, happy is nice, but I need you to be good. Good is important. And she goes, well, is it the same? I go, no, with good, sometimes you're not going to be happy. If you do the right thing, sometimes it's going to hurt. Happy is just a bunch of lunatics running around thinking they're just supposed to be happy all the time, and it'll be at other people's expense. But you can't have a society where everybody thinks they're supposed to be happy. If we had a society where people understood they should be good, it would make a huge difference. My kids were taught to be good, and I'm sure they slip every once in a while, but that's what I wanted them to understand. Good is more important than just be happy.
Yeah, well, really great stuff, George. And yeah, God only knows our country would be in a much better position right now if that message rang true to so many kids, or so many young people growing up around the world today, or around this country at least. And I watched it a few times, George. I'm sure it must have been just a paradox of emotions for you, but the Medal of Honor presentation to your son posthumously by President George Bush. I thought it was a great ceremony. Walk me through that a little bit, if you could. What was kind of going on in your mind? What was that experience like for you? And where do you keep the medal today?
Well, I have it. Unfortunately, we had an earthquake a while ago, and it fell off the wall and cracked the glass. But I have it, and we're trying to repair the case. But I keep it here, and it was obviously it was a special day. But for the family, I think it was kind of painful for us. People say things, and I know they mean well, but sometimes it's a little bit more than that. We've lost our son. My children lost their brother, and it's kind of it's kind of tough, really. And I remember we're talking to President Bush, and he's telling us, I know this is going to be emotional, and we're in the Oval Office, and he says, so let's talk and get our tears out now. And we've cried for a long time, so we didn't have a lot of tears left. But when we go to the ceremony, it was kind of funny. We look up and President Bush is crying.
Unbelievable.
He's actually a nice man.
And I know that I could only imagine then it must have almost seemed like a second funeral at that point, just the way that everybody was honoring your son and doing all that. You have to kind of relive it over and over again as everyone's talking about him. But what would you say? How did your relationship with your other children, did it change at all? What was your experience like as a father with your other children since Michael gave his life for the country?
Yeah, our family is really tight. I mean, we had no changes. We always loved each other. We always took care of each other. The biggest problem is you have this void in your family, this emptiness, and it's something that's never filled. We can talk about Michael and still tear up about just some of the stuff and how much we miss him. So the family is good. We love each other, but we'll always miss them.
Yeah, well said. And what about as far as do you still keep in touch with the Navy SEAL community, particularly the SEALs that Michael saved that day? Are you still in touch with those guys?
I see them when they have they had things for the boat ceremonies and that, and we're pretty easy with everyone. We're good with the community. I think we're good with the community. I called them up and to ask them if they had stories to share, and a lot of them shared a lot of stories. Some of them were just personal. It was just going to be between them and myself. But I think we're pretty good with the SEALs. I've never had a problem calling them up on the phone and having a conversation. And my wife constantly worried about them. She worried about Doug and Mike. It's just one of those things where I know she grew to really care for these guys. And some of them you'd meet, and they're carrying a lot of tough times being in war. A lot of people forget that. So I think we're pretty good with the SEALs.
Well, I can tell you what, George, me and my family never forget that we are blessed to have the sacrifices. There's so many families in this country that we wouldn't stand a chance in this world without you, without men like your son. So thank you again for your service. and really honored to be in a country that produced people like your son, Michael. So again, the book, Defend Us in Battle, available. Link is in the description of this podcast episode for my listeners. Highly encourage everyone needs to read this and get just a sense of the great men and women that do so much to keep us free in this country and around the world. So last thing I want to hit you with here, George, I love to ask all the dads that I get on the podcast, what type of advice do you have for that new dad or for that about to be father who's out there listening?
Well, I would enjoy the ride. I know sometimes it's tough and you think you're getting to the end, but it'll all work out. And as long as you're patient and understand when you were a kid. And I think a lot of fathers have to remember they really should make sure, take care of their wives. Their wife is like the center, the affection, love, and you always have to take care of your wife, respect your wife, and let your children see that. You should have kind of a game plan with your wife before you start working with your children. I had a little bit of a problem with mine. She thought I was a little hard on the kids or the boys. And I asked her, I said, would you want to have men or do you want to have more girls? Because if you want to have men, I think we have to make these type of decisions. But I think a lot of guys, they want to take their sons or whatever, and they really have to show a lot of respect for their wife, because it's important that their children respect the mom and the father, and the father sets the tone. So it can be tough times. You guys will get over it and enjoy it, because it's really a beautiful thing, having a family. It just really is. You're old like me and you see the kids move on. It's something that you really miss. Thank goodness I've got grandchildren so I can spoil them.
Well, listen, very well said. I really love the message. This has been such an honor for me. I got to say, George Monsoor, you're a first-class father all the way, and thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time here on First Class Fatherhood.
Thank you. I appreciate being on your show. Thank you.
You have been listening to First Class Fatherhood. First Class Fatherhood is a family-made media podcast. Please visit www.firstclassfatherhood.com or www.familymade.com to find out more details. You can order First Class Fatherhood advice and wisdom from high-profile dads on Amazon.com or wherever books are sold. Thank you for listening to today's podcast. Proverbs 22:6 tells us, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will never depart from it. God bless, and I'll catch you next time.